Hey, this is Jedley. Before the Reading with Your Kids podcast begins, I want to tell you about a very special offer that I'm putting out there to all the listeners of the show. If you've been listening, you've been hearing me talking about my educational magic show and how I travel all around the eastern United States, bringing my magic show to kids, talking about being respectful, using magic to talk about reading and encourage kids to read. And I know a lot of you're like, I'm not on the East Coast of the United States. We don't have a big budget. I'm not even in the United States. Well, it doesn't matter where you are. I want to make an offer to you. I would love to offer to come to your school, to come to your classroom through the magic of Skype for free. That's right, free author visits from me, Jedley, to your school via the magic of Skype. You can be anywhere in the world. We can work out the time differences and all that other kind of stuff. I'll be doing some magic, talking to your kids about being respectful of themselves, of each other, talking to kids about the magic of reading and about the magic of reading together with their parents or their grandparents or their uncles or aunts or someone that just loves them. I'd love for you to find out more about it. Like I said, it is absolutely free. All you have to do is go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on free Skype visit.
Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, a #1 iTunes kids and family podcast. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for letting the world know all about our show. I want to tell you all about today's episode. I'm really excited. Our guest today is Lenna Kutner. She's going to be telling us about her beautiful book, The Magic of Norumbega Park. Norumbega Park was kind of a magical place when I was growing up, and you're going to love hearing all about it. We would be so very, very happy if you would visit readingwithyourkids.com/yummy, readingwithyourkids.com/yummy. Go there and find out about the easiest way to snack smart and do good. We're talking about Love with Food. Love with Food helps you discover new, organic, all-natural, and gluten-free snacks delivered directly to your door every single month. And membership starts as low as $7.99 a month. And this is why we love with Food so much. Love with Food will donate a portion of the proceeds to help fight childhood hunger in the U.S. and all around the world. Love with Food donates to organizations like Feeding America and the Global Food Banking Network. So join us to help end childhood hunger one meal at a time. Visit readingwithyourkids.com/yummy to say goodbye to boring grocery store selections and to start snacking smart and doing good with Love with Food. Joining us right now from right down the street here in the beautiful Reading with Your Kid podcast studio in Wayland in Massachusetts. She's the author of a great new middle grade book that I feel a little bit of a connection to. The name of the book is The Magic of Norumbega. Please welcome to the show the author, Lenna Kutner. Lenna, how are you?
I'm great, Jed. Thanks for inviting me here today. This is very exciting for me to be speaking with you about the book.
Yeah, Lenna and I were talking right before we started recording. We discovered that we grew up probably about a mile or two from each other. Right outside of Boston, and I was telling her and apologizing to her if in fact I terrorized her when she was a young child. I hope I didn't, but who knows? But the Magic of Norumbega is about a place that lived in my childhood, Norumbega Park. Tell us about the book.
Well, the book is about two dogs, Getty and Murphy, both female dogs, who spend their days playing in a dog park and get transported back in time to Norumbega Park, probably circa 1940 or so. And they discover this enchanted park that was an amusement park. There was a zoo, there was entertainment, trapeze artists and acrobats, and there was a magical ballroom called the Totem Pole Ballroom, which was actually legendary. It was famous all over the country. So they get transported back to this park, which they just find amazing, but they end up being in a heap of trouble, and they have to rely on their ingenuity and on their bravery and on each other to escape the park and get back home.
Cool.
So, and the book's themes are adventure, but also there's a lot about friendship, about their friendship with each other. How do you be friends with someone whose interests are very different than yours, and how far would you go to help a friend who's in trouble?
Whoa, that second question is a really, really big question. And, one of the things I ask authors often is what can parents and kids talk about? Because a middle grade book, we don't typically sit down and read together, read aloud on a couch, but it's certainly something I encourage parents to read, to co-read and read simultaneously and have discussions with our kids about. I think that's a really important discussion to have. How far would we go to support a friend, and how far should we go to help support a friend?
Right. I think that this is a really great book for a parent to read with a child. There are so many questions, and if you go to my website, which is www.magicnorumbega.com, and Norumbega is Norumbega, so magicnorumbega.com, and click on the teacher link. There's lots of discussion questions. And I think that it touches on friendship. There's a little bit about bullying. I think it's a great book for a parent to read with a child.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And that is, friendship is just this magical but a very confusing thing for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times parents just kind of assume, well, the kids will kind of work it out and figure things out on their own. And for the most part, lots of kids do. But like we were talking about, there are a lot of questions that kids aren't necessarily able to figure out, like how far should we go to support our friend, and how do we become friends with someone who has different interests? How can we become friends with somebody who looks different from us, who speaks a different language, who is a different faith, a different religion? And these are really important questions. And lots of kids do figure it out by themselves, but I think these are great questions that parents and kids can work out together.
It is. There is one scene in the book where Getty has been captured at Norumbega. Back in the middle part of the century, there were animal shows there. Mm-hmm. And in the story, she's been captured and being forced to participate in a show with some horses, and she's ostracized by the horses. So it touches on, how do you join a group that doesn't want you to be part of that group? And conversely, how would other people feel if a child wanted to join your group and is being rejected? So, there's that to talk about. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's one of the main characters of the story is the animal trainer, whose name was Cushman in the story. And he's a bully. He's a nasty, mean person. But there's one character in the book to whom he's very nice. And it's sort of open-ended. There's no explanation why he's mean to all the animals except for the bear. And I left it really open-ended like that because I want kids to think about how there's another side. This is another side to everybody. Mm-hmm. Nothing is black and white. Nobody is a bully in every aspect of their life. Nobody is nice in every aspect of their life. People have different sides to them. And I think that's another topic for conversation with a parent or a teacher.
Yeah, and that it really is something, and I think in the whole discussion about bullying, that we forget that because people are oftentimes really quick to say there's no excuse for bullying. There's absolutely no excuse for it. You shouldn't ever bully anybody, and they're absolutely right. But there are reasons why a kid may choose to engage in that behavior or be, react in that way.
Right.
And it may not help the person who's the victim at the time to kind of sit down and think about that at the time they're being hurt. But certainly in terms of parents and teachers trying to deal with this, that's certainly something that needs to be taken into consideration. Again, there's no excuse for somebody abusing somebody else or hurting somebody else, but we do need to be sensitive to the needs of everybody and kind of look past the hurt and the behavior to find a solution to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I do classroom visits every now and again, which I love to do.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we talk about is I say, why do you think that Cushman is nice to Dune? And I love hearing the ideas that the kids come up with about how, what the dynamic might be between those two characters. It's great to hear what the kids come up with and their thoughts about it.
Can you think of any really interesting ideas that they have that you can share with us?
Well, they tend to come up with scenarios like how Dune might have come into the zoo. So Dune is in the zoo and Cushman is his animal trainer. And so they tend to come up with scenarios about maybe Cushman found Dune, maybe Dune rescued Cushman. I mean, they're pretty elaborate stories that are just sort of fun to listen to.
Yeah.
And I have a few open-ended things like that. Like at the end of the story, that Cushman is he's left the park and it's sort of open-ended about, is he gone forever? Is he coming back? And again, I love hearing their stories, sort of about a sequel. So basically, they're coming up with sequels and prequels. How did we get there, and where's it going from here? And they just have such great imaginations.
That's really cool because now you certainly have some content that you can start working on for future projects.
That's right. I should write down or record the ideas for their sequels because some of them are way beyond anything I could ever imagine. So,
well, before we start talking about prequels and sequels, tell us what compelled you to write about this magical place. Now, I have very strong memories of Norumbega Park. I do have a memory of standing outside the gates. I know I went and visited when I was younger, but it closed when I was about 6 years old, I think. And I oftentimes remember, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's it was located right across from where the Newton Wellesley Hospital is now. Is that right?
No. It was located where the Marriott Hotel is.
Okay,
now.
That's right. Yep. And we're talking a little local stuff here, but I do when we would go by the area, my mom and my dad would say, "Well, that's where Norumbega Park was." And why did you choose to write about Norumbega Park?
Well, although I didn't grow up very far away either, I had never been to Norumbega Park when it was open. I had never heard of Norumbega Park. So currently, most of the land of where Norumbega was is a Marriott hotel, but there's about 10 acres or so that was set aside as conservation land, and it's used primarily as a dog park. So we're going back a number of years now. I got a puppy whom I named Getty, and I would take her to the park every day, and it was just a wonderful place. It was very kind of overgrown. It wasn't like landscaped, and it was just lots of wildflowers and trees, and there were lots of other dogs there and lots of people, and it was a really feel-good place. It was like no matter how you felt when you got there, it seemed like everybody was in a good mood when they left. And you probably know this, but the river, the Charles River, runs through the park. It runs between the Marriott Hotel and this conservation land. And Getty would sometimes sit by the river and just sort of drift off, and it was like she was almost listening to something. And in the book, she's listening to music. But I would think, what is she listening to? And she was just sort of a daydreamy kind of dog. She was a golden retriever. I don't know if I mentioned that. And as time went on and I met more people who would go to the dog park every day, I started hearing about this amusement park. And it was very hard to put this together, that this conservation land and hotel was once this fabulous amusement park. It was the best considered to be the best amusement park in New England of its time. It had the largest zoo in New England, and it had this ballroom called the Totem Pole Ballroom that it attracted all the top bands, Glenn Miller and Artie Shaw, and entertainment like Frank Sinatra and Dinah Shore, and the music would be broadcast on the radio throughout the country. So it was quite a famous ballroom. As I learned more about it, I started doing a lot of research and talking to folks who remembered it. And I thought, and I had a young son at the time. He's all grown up now. And I thought, wouldn't this be wonderful to put this into a story form for him so that he and his friends would know about this just great place in the town that they're growing up in, Newton, Massachusetts. So he and I sort of together started writing this book. You know, he was a little kid, and it was our fun project that we would go back to every once in a while. And the story sort of evolved, but, you know, it was not polished in any sense. And I eventually put it in a drawer and kind of forgot about it. And then, jumping ahead a number of years, my next door neighbor, who was this remarkable woman, she's since passed on, but her name was Anastasia Lundquist, and she had written several books in her lifetime, and on her 100th birthday, she published a book. And I thought, wow, I do not want to wait till I'm 100 years old to publish The Magic of Norumbega. So I pulled it out of a drawer, and I really, put a lot of focus into it. And I finished it, and I'm actually very proud of it.
That's wonderful. Wow, it's certainly is a magical book about a magical place that was, so important to so many people who grew up in and around the Boston area.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think I did a pretty good job with, at least from the feedback that I've gotten from people who remember Norumbega, is that although the story obviously is a fantasy with mostly animal characters and a couple of people characters, I tried to keep it very true to the setting so that somebody reading this book would really get a sense of what Norumbega was like. I pulled in some of the real characters who populated Norumbega at the time. For instance, one of the characters in the book is a trapeze artist named Maisie Lynette. And Maisie was actually a trapeze artist who had an iron jaw act where she would cross the river hanging by a high wire by her jaw. There's like a little ring that hangs from the wire, and she would hang onto it between her teeth and glide along the river. And that was one of the more popular acts at the park back probably in the late 30s or early 40s. So I tried to, so she's a main character or a secondary character in the story. Dune the bear, who's a main character, he in the story, he enjoys escaping from his cage and climbing a tree because he knows that the animal trainer is going to bring him ice cream to coax him back to the cage. That actually used to happen in the early days of Norumbega. The bears would escape. They weren't aggressive. They weren't, they were well fed and didn't have cubs that they were protecting. They would escape from their cages and they would be coaxed back to their cages with ice cream. So I tried to integrate as many things as I could from the real park into the book so that somebody reading the book would really get a sense of what it was like there.
Yeah, it's incredible. Our society has changed so much. A lot of these parks, as I was going over and preparing for this interview, I was surprised to learn that a lot of these parks that were called trolley parks were created by the trolley companies to give
That's right.
give people in the cities a place to go to on the weekends when they weren't using the trolleys for work, and I think that's incredible. And of course, these local, most of these local amusement parks are gone, and they've been replaced by places like Disney World and Universal, and
Right.
they're great, wonderful, special places. But I think we're, missing kind of that local that local magic that happened in places like Norumbega Park and like Paragon Park, another place you and I used to go to when we were young.
That's right.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I talk about when I visit classrooms is what life was like then, and why something like a trolley park was so popular. What did people do for transportation? There, you know, how did you get around at the turn of the century? Because Norumbega opened in 1897. There were horses, you know, horse and carriage, and there were trolleys. And so what did people do for entertainment before these parks opened up? And what did it cost to get into a park? So a ride on the trolley from Boston into Newton and back, so round trip, and admission into the park was 15 cents. And the kids think, wow, that's so cheap. But then we talk about how families tended to be very large in those days. And grandparents were often living with the family, and there were often, you know, 8 kids in a family or so. And so 15 cents a person, it would add up. So it, you know, wasn't quite as cheap as it seemed. And then we talk about some of the rules of the park, which were very interesting and kind of laughable today, but there was no kissing between adults allowed in the park. And if you were caught kissing, there was a fine of like $20. I mean, it was like this crazy amount of money if you were caught kissing.
Well,
the kids really love hearing about those kind of rules that are so different from society today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a good look at how how life has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, this is wonderful. Well, you've already told us, already reminded folks that your website is magicnorumbega.com. And the book, The Magic of Norumbega, is available on the website. You can get am I right? Can you get an autographed copy ordering?
Yes, you can get it, an autographed copy from my website, or you can get the book on Amazon. And then there's a few little local shops nearby where I live that sell the book.
You know, I was just thinking out there, and I just want to plant the seed into some minds out there, especially some grandparents who may remember the trolley parks. My wife just received, one of the guests on the show sent along, her book was just published. She sent along an autographed copy of her book and dedicated the book to my wife's class, so to Mrs. G's class. And the book is about science, and so it had a nice little message about reaching for the stars, and you know, you can make your dreams come true. If you're a parent out there, you have some grandkids and they're getting ready to go to school, what a neat present to order an autographed copy of The Magic of Norumbega. That your kids can go in and just make a gift to the classroom, and that's something that the kids can share with this autograph from the author, just, you know, wishing the kids well, wishing them a great school year, and encouraging their study of history. I think that would be a great gift, and you can make that happen at the Magic.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's magicnorumbega.com to make that happen. So we talked a little earlier how kids are giving you some ideas. Are you planning on a sequel or prequel, or are you working on another project?
For right now, I mean, I worked on this book for so many years that I needed to take a break and move to something else. I'm working on a book now. I'm not very far into it. It's tentatively titled Mascot on the Mound. And it's a very different book than this, although it's still aimed towards middle grade. It's about a girl in 1968, 69. She's 11 years old, and she wants to play baseball. And it ties in with the Red Sox. The 68 was, or 67 or 68 was the Impossible Dream team, and Tony Conigliaro, who was injured by a pitch. And so it's just about how she tries to go about becoming a member of a baseball team, which, of course, in those days was impossible for a girl to do.
I was just going to say, my cousin Darlene was absolutely the very best baseball player in all of Whiskey Point. And when she was on our park league team, and when we go to other playgrounds, or oftentimes other playgrounds wouldn't play us, because we had a girl on the team, and that was in 1967. So, so that would be really, I think that I can't wait for that book to come out, and I'd love to have you back on because that's a really important topic, and especially so kids can see that kind of change that's happened, and can really celebrate the fact that girls have a lot more opportunities these days. Yeah,
great. I would love to come back. I hope to finish it soon.
All right.
We'll see.
That's
we'll see
great.
How it goes.
Well, while we're waiting for Lenna to finish that book, make sure you check out The Magic of Norumbega. It's a great middle grade read, and check out her website, magicnorumbega.com. Lenna Kutner, thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Amber Perth. She'll be telling us about Wellspring Crow, the Navigator series. It is a great interview. You do not want to miss it. Hey, we want to thank Lenna Kutner for being here today, reminding us about the magic of Norumbega Park. And, of course, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.